child isn't the problem. Hi, I'm Ann Alvarez, parent coach, author, educator, and mom of two. Welcome to Masterful Parenting, where we break generational cycles, understand our triggers, and learn how to parent with calm, confidence, and connection. Because the truth is, your child isn't the problem. Your triggers are the roadmap. And when we learn how to regulate that, everything changes. Let's get into today's episode. Hello, parents. Welcome to the Masterful Parenting Podcast and YouTube channel. I'm super excited because I have a special guest. His name is Terraine Brown. And I've been on his show, Beyond the Shades. And I just felt like this would be a really good guest to have so we can dive into childhood experiences, trauma, and also the healing journey of that. So welcome, Terrain. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you so much. And the pleasure is all mine. And I can't wait to have this conversation about childhood, trauma, identity, and everything in between. So I'm excited for
Awesome.
it.
Okay, can you tell our parents who you are and a little bit about, what you do?
Of course. So I'm Terraine Brown, and what I do is I help women who've been abused financially, physically, or in other forms rebuild their lives, as well as I'm a podcaster. That's how Ann and I met.
Mm-hmm.
And I work with two charities as well, one in Canada, one in the States, where Anne has actually been a guest speaker as well when it came to grief. So that is what I do. And a little bit about myself is I struggled with childhood trauma myself. I was raised without my mother or my father growing up. It was my grandmother who was my superhero from the ages 1 to 5, and she helped to create the man that you see in front of you today. So thank you, Anne.
Shout out for the grandparents. Honestly, I've heard this a lot where grandparents have really just taken on their grandkids and gave them the love, support, guidance. I just have to give a shout out to those grandparents. You're amazing. All right, dive into it. Let's talk about how did this happen? How did you get to this situation where your parents were not actively in your life as a child?
Absolutely. So many, many years ago, as the young kids would say in the 1900s, my mother and my father, they looked across the farmer's market, they fell in love, and they decided to have a child named Terrain. At that time, they both were ascending in their careers. So what they did, they had to make a choice. Either they're going to be full-time parents or they're going to be full-time workers. And they decided to pursue their career, and they left me with my mother's mother, which is my grandmother, Iris, rest in peace. And they made a choice that they needed to establish their careers first before becoming a parent because unfortunately they weren't prepared to do both. And then I was with my grandmother, and she provided everything that I needed at that time. And let me tell you, like, I didn't even know that I didn't have a mother or father until later on when I was told, because my experiences were still very good from what I remember.
Okay, so you were surprised then, right? You weren't planned by your parents. Is that right?
That's my understanding. Yes, my
Yeah.
understanding is that it was they were doing the act that create children, right?
Obviously.
Yeah, obviously. It is the
Okay.
50s and the 60s, everybody, right? They were,
Okay. Yeah.
But yes, I was a surprise. I wasn't planned. At least not by today's definition of planned parenting.
Okay. So from infancy, your grandmother took you. How old were you when
Yes.
yeah.
Oh, I want to say probably a couple of months.
Okay.
Right, very, very young. Because when I used to visit my grandmother, she had all the baby photos, like me in my crib with the stuffed animals. She had all of that. My mother and my father don't have any of that to this day.
You were her baby.
I was her fourth child, her second son.
Amazing. Okay, so let's get into when did you discover that you actually had parents and that they weren't in your life?
One day we went to the park, and a lot of times when you go to the park as children, right? Like you begin to see other parents and other children. And then at that time, I was wondering, why is my parents so much older than the parents at the park, right? Like it's a generation difference.
Yeah.
And then that's the first sign that I remember noticing the difference around me. And then there was the conversation, and I also remember being at my parents' wedding. So that was
Wait, wait,
second
wait, wait.
memory.
How old were you when you went to the park and you realized that your grandparents are so much older than the other parents?
Oh, I must have been like four, right? Five. I was
Oh,
very,
okay.
very young. Um, because it was always my grandmother and myself. It wasn't
Yes.
my grandmother, my grandfather, and myself. So
Okay.
I do remember seeing that. And I do remember her having the conversation with me at that time, saying that, hey, your parents are off somewhere else. They're working, and it's you and I together.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. All right. Sorry to interrupt you. I was just trying to, as you're telling the story, I'm making a picture in my mind of your experience. Okay, so then, when was your first meeting with your parents?
My first meeting with my parents was at their wedding. I was
Okay.
the ring bearer. It was looking back, it was a little uncomfortable because it's like because these two are strangers to me, right?
Yes. Mhm.
So, I felt honored because you have this little train, 5, 6 years old in a tux. I look very nice, very sharp, nice clean cut hair, no beard. Um, but that was my first memory of them. They told me that they visited my grandmother to see me, but I don't have any memory of that. So maybe it wasn't memorable, or maybe it was just lost because of the trauma. But the first memory was definitely at their wedding.
Okay, okay. So then after the wedding, did you have a regular contact with them or no?
Not right after. So it was probably like a year or so where they were established enough and I had to move there. So it was a different part of Canada.
Hmm.
That was a devastating experience for myself and my grandmother.
Because your grandmother and you had to move to them to be closer to
No,
them?
my grandmother
Okay.
stayed. So it was like she was losing her child, and
Um,
she cried, and we thought that, oh, sorry, her children, my aunt, uncle, and my mother, they thought she was going to be in the hospital because she was suffering such withdrawals from me
yeah.
being away. And it was very scary for her because remember, she's older and you don't want anyone to experience anxiety or that level of stress. So you ever seen those movies where the child gets pulled from the parents? Well, think of
Yes.
that. So it was a very devastating experience for everyone involved.
How old were you?
I must have been 6, right before we start school. So you start school kindergarten 7, I think, 7, 8,
Yeah.
about that time. So
So
yeah.
start kindergarten at 5 and then grade 1, 6. I know this because I'm a school teacher.
Yeah, so no, so
So,
that's yeah, so it was grade 1, yeah, so it was about 6. It was grade 1.
okay, so then you were moving to another part of Canada to live with your parents that you did not know at all.
I did not know at all. Let me tell you, and when I got to school, I was so distraught that I didn't even speak, and they thought that I could even speak English. So
Wow.
imagine you get pulled from your primary caregiver, which is your mother and your father, and you love this person. And now you're with strangers, and now you feel so out of it, so out of place that you don't speak. And then the teachers thought that, okay, I need to go to ESL, English as a second language, right? Because I wasn't communicating to everyone because I missed my grandmother and I felt so alone, even though these were my biological parents, they weren't emotionally my parents at that time.
You were grieving. You didn't know that you were grieving, but you were grieving,
Yeah.
right?
Looking
Yeah,
back, I was grieving the loss of my connection with my grandmother, who I didn't even know if I was going to see her again at that point.
yeah. Okay, so then what happened? You stayed with, when did you start talking again? Did it take a while?
It took a while. So, if you remember, there was a different way to discipline children in
Mhm.
the late
Back in
80s, 90s.
back in the day, yes.
Back in the day, right?
Yeah.
So I remember what would happen is the teacher actually used to hit me to get me to speak. So it was a devastating, as you can imagine, it's like Turing doesn't get better. It does, but sometimes you have to tell them how far you've fallen. So I remember that the teacher hitting me, not to call her name, I remember her name, but I remember the principal getting involved and things like that. So it wasn't until maybe a year or so later that I started to speak. But part of the reason why was like any child, right? If you're disciplined in a physical sense, you want to do everything not to get that. So I learned pretty quickly to speak.
Yeah, but it was out of fear.
It was out of
It was,
fear.
and they thought you not speaking was an act of defiance.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yes, yeah. Maybe they thought I was defying their authority or I was being insubordinate. Yeah, yeah, good point.
Yeah, because I think the reason I delve into this is because a lot of parents are still programmed to believing that punishment is the way to change behavior with our kids. Yes, it's a way to change behavior with our kids, but it damages them. And they also see behavior as defiance when actually behavior is communication. It's not defiance. And so the communication part for you, Terrain, was that you were grieving the loss of your family, really, the loss of your grandmother who loved you so dearly and took good care of you and you were so connected to. So that is what was missing. Thankfully, we have moved beyond that, where we're not hitting our children at school. Thank you. And that we come with a place of more understanding. I'm in the school system still, so I know that there's a lot of loving teachers. We have kids that are selected mute. That's what they call it, right? Selected mute. And a lot of times it has to do with trauma. And so our kids will stop talking. I mean, Oprah Winfrey talked about this. She went through a period where she did not talk and they were worried about her, but it was because she had experienced trauma. She was raped, right? And so that was the reason. And that's why I want parents to know that behavior is communication. And when our kids are not speaking, it's because something is going on. Like they have been damaged in some way, right? So it's really, really, I think that's really such a powerful conversation to have. So did you end up having any bond with your parents? Like, were they able to repair this relationship?
It was tough. It was tough. So if you look at, let's say, like my childhood experience where I was experiencing that at the hands of a teacher, and then later on I experienced that at the hands of my mother as well. So I didn't have, outside of my grandmother, I didn't really have a good representation of women in my life at a very young age.
Okay.
But as I got older, um, I remember in the neighborhood that we ultimately moved into when I was in high school. I was able to get a good connection with families in the neighborhood. That helped me to repair the relationship with my mother and my father because eventually I found the courage to ask them why. And I don't think a lot of children end up doing that. But for me, I needed it. And the reason why I needed it is because I felt that I wasn't good enough for them because they later had my brother and my sister, and they were always around my brother and my sister. Right? My brother and sister live in the house, they lived in the suburbs, things like that. And I didn't have that connection. So that's how I was able to eventually repair it. It took years, but those were
Yeah.
the first steps and the building blocks to repairing it.
Okay. How old were you when you realized that you wanted to talk to your parents about this?
It was after I was told to leave the house because I didn't wash the dishes after work.
Okay.
So I was actually told to leave.
Teenager?
Yeah, I was 16. I was still in high school. I remember packing some of my clothes and going to the high school at that time and speaking to the principal. I said, Principal, this is what happened. And they had, I don't know if they still have it now, but they had guidance counselors and things
Yes.
like that. This school was fantastic for that. So I want to give them kudos to doing that. They helped me to rebuild everything from my relationship with teachers to that. Once I was able to come back home, then I eventually moved out because I had enough money. It wasn't until I was probably 23, 24, where we all sat down, we had a conversation. They were more mature. They were able to listen, which is key. I was able to communicate, which was also key. And that started everything, right? Better path for myself and my father and my mother at that time.
Okay, so at the age of 23, something in you said, I need to talk to my parents about this. You instigated it, right?
I did, yes, because where I was living, I saw happy families,
Yes.
right? Which I didn't see until I was 3, 4, right? I didn't see until my grandmother. So I had 18 years not seeing it, right? So when I finally began to see it, I was like, it feels good to eat at a dinner table and both parents are there and the family's there and they say, pass the bread, pass this. I
Yes.
wanted that for myself. So either I was going to marry into it and create it myself, or I was going to repair. So I was like, okay, Terraine, which one do you have more control over? Which was the
Mhm.
repair. So I proactively said, this is what I need to do. And I went about to doing it.
That was so mature and insightful of you, honestly. Because I did the same thing with my mom. My dad passed away when I was 21, but with my mom, I did the same thing. I said, I'm going to have a talk with her about my childhood. And it took a long time. It took a long time because my mom was still being very toxic with me, and I didn't feel safe with her to talk about it by myself. But I got the courage to do that. And that was a key moment in my healing journey with my mom. And we've gone like decades now, but now we have a better understanding of each other and we're close and we love each other, right? And my mom's apologized numerous times. So that opened my heart to her. And that's why I say to parents how important it is to apologize to our kids. Because if you stick with not apologizing and saying that, well, I did what I had to do and I was stressed and make excuses, then our kids have a hard time forgiving or letting go. But when a parent um, apologizes, that helps to repair the relationship. So now I'm curious to know what happened when you brought it up to your parents. How did they receive that?
They listened, which I was very surprised. They
Mhm.
actually listened. And looking back, I was like, I should have did this earlier.
Yes.
Right? But I wasn't ready for the conversation because, to be honest, I needed to do some healing for myself, right? So they listened and they opened up. That's how I knew that sometimes um parents aren't ready to be parents, and they admitted that we weren't ready to be parents. We had all these dreams because both of them are college university graduate. My mother was she's an accountant for a big company, and my dad was vice president. Like, they had big dreams, and these are people, and I'm adding this part because just because of the time, these are people of color achieving these things. So there
Yes.
is a sense of pride and
Yes.
prestige for them, right? So they thought that, okay, if I have a child, maybe I won't be able to accomplish these things. So they had to make a decision. And I can respect the decision.
Mm-hmm.
I may not like it because I'm still a family first type of person. If I had a child, it's my child first above everything else. But not everyone thinks that way. And there's 8 billion people, and I can't expect people. So they were very open to listening, and they were sharing those things, and it allowed them to be vulnerable in a way, because to tell your child that they think they weren't ready, a lot of people go to view parents differently, and this is not to shame them, this is to educate, because there's probably a number of parents that feel that same way, or a number of children that are like, oh my God, Terrain, and you spoke to your parents, yes, you can do it too. So I learned a lot, to answer your question, and they took it better than I expected. And going forward, it allowed me the opportunity to say that I'm not that 6-year-old who is choosing not to communicate. I could communicate.
Yes. Yes. Did they apologize?
They did. They did. And the reason why I hesitate to answer that is I know how apology should look now, but at that time, that apology was what I needed.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, there's a difference between saying I'm sorry and then actually feeling it. Feeling the pain that your absence caused, you know. Um, and we're not here to judge. Honestly, I agree with you, Terraine. We're not here to judge. We're here to understand. And to understand what a child goes through when their parent is absent or parents are absent, and you remove them from the loving person that cared for them. Uh, it's damaging. It's really damaging. And trying to make relationship with your child when they're older is really hard because the grinding years when they're infants and they totally depend on you, and that's when connection, safety is built, honestly, from day one when you're born. Is the connection and the safety is built at that time. So to try and connect it later, like it was 6 was good, not great, but okay. But I know parents that try to connect when their child is a teenager, 13, 14, and the child doesn't listen because why? Because they have no connection with you, right? And so like that connection piece is so huge in the role of a parent. And the earlier you connect, the easier it is to parent, honestly. That's the truth.
I agree.
So,
I agree.
yeah,
If I may share one thing as well, is one thing that was always lost on me growing up was the saying that it's your mother, it's your father. You
yeah,
should accept that. It's your mother, it's your father. You should allow that.
yeah,
Because I didn't grow up with my mother and my father, that was always odd to me, and I struggle to understand why people would allow certain behaviors because they're the mother or the father when they wouldn't allow it from anyone else.
yeah,
So I did want to point that out that I did struggle with that, especially when it came to, as you mentioned, sharing what I was going through, because some people would just say, well, it's your mom, it's your dad. You should forgive them. I'm like, but they haven't asked to be forgiven.
yes.
So I think I want to point that out as well.
Yeah, I do want to say, because I'm similar to you, Terrain, where the messaging was you just respect your parents. You don't question. You just have to respect them and do what they say. But honestly, that's not a relationship. And you and I have talked about this, right? A relationship is mutual. A relationship is you both communicate what your needs are. And that goes for parents too. We communicate our needs to our kids communicate their needs to us. That's a relationship. Following or just doing things because they're your parents, doing things that you don't feel, but they feel good if you respect them. Like my mom used to make us get up from whatever we were doing and greet her at the door when she came home from work, right? But we didn't feel it in our heart. We didn't feel it in our heart, but it was an expectation because it showed respect. And so that does not actually build relationship when you're forced to do things because they're your parent, right? That's not a relationship. And that's what parents need to understand, that you're actually not building relationship with your kids. Any kind of forcing is not healthy. It's not a healthy relationship. So over the time, like, did you come to like really love your parents, or was there always this strain?
There was always a strain because for the longest time, I actually caught myself doing this a number of years ago. Um, I would always call them by their first name. I didn't call them
Oh,
mom and dad. And then one day I was like, hmm, when's the last time I called them mom and dad? And I couldn't remember. So it was always their first name, and it was just an interesting and it was so subconscious, right? Like I wasn't doing it to be disrespectful. It's just I didn't view them
Yes.
as my mother and my father. So that's something I had to work on. And the way that I worked on it is that I put myself in their shoes and I said that, can I honestly say that they're making an effort? I'm like, yes. Is the effort that they're making great? No.
Okay.
Is it bad? No. Is it somewhere in the middle? Absolutely. So then, Terrain, is that worthy of you at least trying to meet them halfway? And I said yes. So what I started doing is I started to try to shape the way I looked at them, and that helped me to bridge that connection. But when it came to love, I had to learn to love them because I didn't have the natural love that a child and a parent had. With my grandmother, yes, when my grandmother came to visit, whatever she wants, she gets from me. She asked me to
Yes.
go do this, but it was a natural thing. From my mother, my father was very unnatural because
Yes.
I didn't get it from them. And I always felt that I was giving more than I was receiving, so I had to find a balance. And that's how I learned to love them.
I think that's part of that healing journey is, and this is what I teach parents and people who are going through healing is when we take ourselves out of the picture and we look at our parents uh, objectively and try to understand like where they were coming from, why they did the things they did, understanding their background too, right? Their own childhood helps us to develop empathy for them instead of feeling bitterness and anger, right? So the fact that you did that actually was probably a factor in how you were able to heal better. Would you agree?
I would agree. I would agree. And I think one of the benefits is that being around those who are older in age because of the imprint from my grandmother, I was able to learn from them, right? I think if I had a stronger connection with those who are my age, I don't know if I would have been able to be so proactive,
Mhm.
right? Versus like the other generation, as we get closer to not being here anymore, we begin to
Mhm.
evaluate our lives, right? I think that's a natural thing for a lot
Yeah.
of people. And I've always read where people would have like deathbed regrets. And one of the regrets is the relationship that they have with their family, not deciding to pursue some of their passions and staying in a job that they didn't like,
Yes.
right? So being around older people or the generation above me always helped to guide me that way. And I think that's what helped with me being proactive. Whereas if I hung around people my age at that time, it would have been like, yeah, let's go party tonight, let's go drink. My parents don't like me. Well, my parents hate me too. I can't wait till they're dead. Because that's how so many people, you know how it was growing up,
True.
right?
Yes. Yes. They're like, oh, to hell with them. I'm gonna live my life. Right.
There you go. You know, that's their rules, not my rules. You know, I can't wait to put them in an old folks' home. That's how people would talk, right? Our generation was bad for that.
Yes, I know. I know. I understand that. I don't know, like, but I just feel like I don't know. You and I have talked. I'm a God woman. And I just feel like God will show you another way. Like when you went to your friend's family and you saw, wow, this is a healthy family. Look at them, all of them having fun, joking, laughing. And I had a similar experience when I was a teenager. And I said to myself, I want that. That's what I want. I realized what was missing in my home and I made it intentional that that was what I wanted in my own life. And so I'm grateful because God showing me that helped me to be very choosy about who I let into my life. Like, as far as my friends are amazing. They would do anything for me. I would do anything for them. As far as nurturing my children, that experience of seeing what was healthy was my first indication of what relationships are supposed to be because I wasn't living that, right? And so, did you find like on the journey, you started to get clearer on what wasn't good, what wasn't healthy, like, do your chores like this controlling kind of um, parenting. Did you start to see that actually this is what's healthy in relationships, not this?
Oh yeah, once I started to have the support system, right? And you mentioned that you're a religious person. Around that time, I rediscovered my relationship with God as well in my mid 20s. So by the time I got to my 30s, I knew crystal clear and exactly what I wanted. And at that point, I began to structure my life accordingly. The friends that I had in my 20s when I moved out, no longer in my life, right? They're not bad people, just they're just the journey that I'm going on, they just can't accompany me. So the majority, if not all of my friends were, when it came to relationships, they were married, long-term relationships. I started hanging around more families. I started to get involved in community. I started to see all these things because it was missing in my life. And when I go back and look at it, my grandmother was such a charitable person, such a God-loving woman, right? God-fearing.
Yes.
It's interesting how I went from the first couple years of my life in that world, and then I went 20 something years trying to figure it all out. And then once I hit my 30s, I was like, wow, full circle. This is exactly why I'm here. And when I started to do that, I knew what I wanted. So I said, okay, the friends in my life, man, woman, or everything otherwise, this is the type of behaviors I find. The woman that I'm going to date and spend time with, this is exactly what I was looking for. It was crystal clear. Where in my 20s, it was opaque. I didn't understand. So that is how I realized the type of people that I wanted because similar to you, once I got a taste and a smell of it, I was like, I want more. And I'm going to fill
Yes.
the room with this scent.
Mhm. Amazing. Amazing. I want to talk a little bit about childhood identity because what happened to you kind of formed in the early years how you felt about yourself, right? So when you left the nurturing environment of your grandma and you went to your parents who you did not know at the age of 6, in your mind, do you remember like what kind of messaging did you give yourself about that experience as a child?
Well, yeah, I felt very out of place.
Yeah,
I felt isolated because early on, the experience with the teachers, and then as I was going through school, middle school, elementary school, I was getting bullied as well. So my identity was always of someone who's fragile, someone who's
yeah,
weak, who can't
yeah.
defend himself because I was reliant, not to disrespect her, but I guess because I was so reliant on my grandmother when she wasn't around, I felt I had no one to rely on.
Yes.
So I felt weak. I felt out of place. And that lasted a long time until maybe high school, 14, 15. I was like 80, 90 pounds. I was so skinny, growth spurts. So now you're stretching out. It wasn't until I found sports and the gym.
Wow.
And sports played a big part because I had a strong father figure as a coach and had a strong mother figure as an English teacher.
Mm.
And those two were so important in my life at that time because one, I grew up to love sports, and two, I grew up to love English. Remember, this is the kid that wasn't speaking, and they thought I needed English as a second language, right?
Amazing.
That is how it reshaped my identity of someone who was fragile and weak into someone who was courageous, brave, and more importantly, someone that was able to communicate their thoughts because that was something that I felt that I couldn't do before.
Right. Wow, that is really, really amazing that you were able to change that. I mean, you endured this identity for a while. But this is why it's so good to have a village because you had people. People were brought into your life to show you a different you, to show you a different terrain, that you are not this little wimpy kid that's scared. You're actually this athletic, strong, like it's so amazing to me how you can change. People can change so drastically from their childhood, right? Their childhood experience and become what they were actually always supposed to be, but they didn't have what they needed to realize it, you know?
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And I will also add, and that it's for someone like me, the community, the village, it was so important because I could have said that, well, growing up, I had a bad experience in school, so I'm going to shy away. School became my safe space. Like, I love the education system because I know what it did for me. Sure, there were some hiccups in the beginning, but that was one person. After that, from high school, college, university, all of my educators have left such an positive imprint on me, which is probably why I read so many books, which is probably why I'm so charitable. So I want to highlight that point because you may feel that you're alone, especially growing up and we're trying to figure it out because of hormones and puberty and all this other stuff. But when it came to education, I was never alone in a book. My
Yeah.
I used to dream all kinds of stories, and when I used to pick up these books, I would put myself as the characters, and I loved that. And I think so many children probably still do that.
Yes. Yes. I so relate because I was a reader too. And the reading, getting into different worlds helped me to to know that there was more. There was more than what I had lived. And there was some really amazing things that could happen in my life. It gave me hope. So, yeah, I love teachers. I'm a teacher. I just feel teachers have a heart. Teachers who have a heart for kids make the most impact in children's lives. Even if their childhood, their family home is not ideal, when they come to school and they feel loved and supported, you can nurture, their identity so that they can overcome what they came from. So shout out to the educators out there, like that have a heart and take the time to really love their students and help them see what they can't see in themselves, you know, see that they are more than not being able to read right now, because you're going to get there. That kind of messaging, so, so powerful. All right, let's go over. I know you have this amazing SOAR method when you're doing your coaching. Do you want to just briefly talk about that?
Of course, of course. That's my
Okay.
bread and butter. Of course I
Okay.
can.
Excellent.
So yeah, so the soar is I got it because I'm a reader. So if anyone knows the story of Kid Icarus, and he's given these wax wings and he flew and he flew and he flew and he flew too close to the sun, they melted, he fell to the earth, and that's the story of the Greek mythology. My version is that there's a study done where if you give kids a cape, right? You tell them to become their favorite superhero. They perform better because they feel empowered. You're making children superheroes. So I've extended that with the SOAR method where you can fly, baby, fly. And it starts with the essay is start, stop. What do you want to start doing? What do you want to stop doing? The O is overcome. What's in your life that you want to overcome? It could be parent alienation. It could be a childhood trauma. It could be any of these things. And the A is acknowledge. What is it we want to acknowledge about yourself? You are valuable because you're born with value, right? So you want to acknowledge that. And the R is to reclaim. Reclaim something that is lost. Maybe someone has taken something from you when you're a child because you were bullied, maybe, or you're teased because of your looks, your weight. You want to reclaim that to the earlier point. You are valuable regardless of your childhood experience. So that is a SOAR method that I use with the
Love
men and women
it.
I work with.
Love, love, love. That's so good. and easy to remember.
Yeah, we
Really
all want
good.
to soar, right?
Yes, we all want to soar, and we're all meant to soar. That's the thing. We're all meant to soar, right? We just don't realize we are meant to soar. Okay, so if you were going to just leave with a few pearls of wisdom, we are talking to parents who maybe know that they're still carrying the burden of their childhood, what would you say to them that can help them in their healing, on the road to healing?
Yeah, so I'd like to leave two things. One is your childhood experience, whether it's good, bad, or in between, it doesn't define you. Meaning that you do have a way to overcome it and you do have a way to ensure that you're not repeating generational trauma. Because I think that's a fear of a lot of parents who've had a bad childhood experience, that they're going to become the parent that they didn't like growing up. And the second thing is you will always be loved. And the reason why I want to say that is you will always love yourself. Your children will always love you if you come from a place of care and compassion and not control. If you can show that you care enough about yourself to make certain changes, your children will love you. If you can show your children that you're coming from a place of compassion to right any wrong, as Anne mentioned, to apologize, your children will always love you. And the reason that is, I'm an example of that. What I shared today and everything that I've gone through, if my parents would have asked me today, I don't wish them any harm. I don't wish them a bad experience. I have love for my mother and my father. And the reason why I can say that is because the effort is there. Whether they become the greatest parents in the world, that doesn't matter to me because it's progression and not perfection. So those are the two things I want to leave with everyone today.
Wow, that's so, so, so good. Okay, tell our audience where they can find you, if they're needing some support, maybe you can do a shout out for your business.
Absolutely. So first and foremost, Anne, thank you for allowing me to be on your show. The opportunity is so, so dearly appreciated. So thank you for everything that you do. You are a blessing, madam.
Thank you.
The second thing is anyone who is supporting Anne who listens to this, I want to offer each and every one of you one free coaching session with me. We can have a conversation and you can put that out if you want there as well. So that's a big thank you to Anne and her audience. And the third thing is for those who want to reach me, you can reach me at www.behindtheshades.ca. That is my website. Or email me at behindtheshadesinterviews@gmail.com. Thank you, Anne.
Love it, love it. Let's heal together, right? Let's all heal.
Yes. Let's be our village and community together. We need each other more than ever.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Terraine Brown. Always a pleasure to talk to you. And
Thank you,
thank
Anne.
you, parents. Thank you, parents. And we will see you on the next episode. Take care, everybody. Before you go, this is the part that most parents miss. Change doesn't happen when you try harder. It happens when you learn how to regulate in the moment. So, if you're ready to shift how you show up as a parent, join my Triggered to Regulated Reset Challenge or work with me directly. Links are below. And if this supported you, share it with another parent who you think might need it. Because when you heal, your children don't have to. I'll see you in the next episode.